Hello and welcome back to K&K Real Talk. I am so excited about today's episode. But first, if you haven't met me yet, my name is Kenny King. I am your Endo and Me holistic health and wellness coach, specializing in helping you find natural solutions to manage and reduce your symptoms. However, if you're here and if you've been tuning in, we know that we have so many women that have this just focusing on women's health and women's issues across the board. So I'm very excited today because you guys hear me talk about acupuncture and my personal experience with how acupuncture really supported me post surgery and just supported me in terms of my healing journey to help me reduce symptoms. So I talk about this a lot, and I actually went to, in the Houston area, the Axelrad clinic for my treatments. And so I have with me today Chris Axelrad. He is a fertility specialist, acupuncturist, and the director of the Axelrad clinic in the Houston area. So Chris, I am so excited to have you on today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. So yeah, today is all about this concept of fertility with endometriosis. We have, so many women who are listening in that either have endometriosis or who don't have a diagnosis yet, but think they have endometriosis. And we have women that have PCOS and all of these health issues. And I know that this is your specialty. And so many ask me, what the heck? Like, what is acupuncture? Like, they ask me questions like, what should I expect on my first experience? And mine was actually really funny, my very first experience, because I was a little nervous. I also have anxiety, so I was nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I might die if they leave me alone in this room. So if you could, will you just share a little bit about acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine and really the focus of your work?
Sure. Well, acupuncture specifically is just, we use these very tiny needles. They only go in our style at my clinic, very, very much on the surface. So maybe not even a half inch, like a centimeter. So we're just trying to stimulate these very specific trigger points on the surface of the body. Most of the time the needles are placed elbows down, knees down, sometimes on the tummy. So it's not anywhere like super painful. In fact, and the needles you don't even really feel them, honestly, because we use very high quality needles at my clinic. That are very, very sharp. And of course people would think, oh, it's sharp, but actually just like a sharp razor blade you won't feel it when it cuts you because it's so sharp, right? It's the same thing with the needles. The needles, if they're really sharp and they're really high quality, you really don't even feel them at all. But they stimulate these very specific trigger points, which have been shown over centuries and centuries to cause different effects inside the body. How that exactly happens is kind of a mystery to science, and to even to acupuncturists. There's a lot of theories about that, but the way I always like to explain it is we all know, most of us know anyway, biology, we have this theory of cell receptors where the cell is doing something and then a thing comes along and it plugs into a receptor on the outside of the cell. And then all this stuff starts happening on the inside of the cell, even though really the only thing that's changed is that something has been touched on the surface of the cell, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that technically what acupuncture is kind of this roadmap of these kinesthetic receptors on the surface of the body that trigger different things to happen inside the body. So that's kind of how it works as far as helping people with all kinds of conditions, because using the different trigger points, and if you select them skillfully, then you can really combine different groups of points to do things like increase blood flow to the ovaries, which for fertility purposes is really helpful. Bring down blood pressure, improve metabolism and digestion, reduce pain. Obviously, that's one of the biggest things acupuncture is famous for. As far as Chinese medicine as a whole, so acupuncture is a branch of Chinese medicine, just like we would say in conventional medicine, we have internal medicine, which is more medications and drugs. And then we have surgery, which is more of a physical intervention. So acupuncture is kind of like the surgery of Chinese medicine. And then we have the herbal medicine within Chinese medicine, which is more like the internal medicine. So that's where we're using natural plant substances, mostly, sometimes minerals, sometimes animal. But in the U.S., we don't have access to, nor would we ever use endangered species. So it's animals, different animal products that are safe and properly processed for medicinal use. And these substances are used to trigger different responses again inside the body. So reduce inflammation, calm the digestive system. In terms of the fertility side, we have herbs that can increase estrogen production, increase testosterone production, decrease prolactin production, all kinds of different things. So when you know how to use these things skillfully, again, you can have some pretty profound effects on the hormonal physiology and the blood flow in the body, which can be positive for all kinds of things. And then finally, in Chinese medicine, it's very comprehensive. So there's also meditation techniques that come from it. And there's also dietary principles and things. So it's really I call it the most complete and most advanced form of holistic medicine on earth, for sure. It definitely is. So when we look at scientifically advanced medicine, we would say, that Western medicine, in terms of science and technology, has advanced to a very high degree. Chinese medicine has advanced to a very, 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 like the ultimate in terms of holistic wisdom and that kind of thing. So there you go. There's my review.
Yeah. Well, and I think so. My experience was because I had been on a journey of sort of healing from the inside out before I came to your clinic. So I was shifting my nutrition, I was shifting my lifestyle. I was working on some of these areas already.
Yeah.
And what my experience was, though, I guess like the shift for me was there were sort of missing pieces of the system working together.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that other layer of stimulating my body to work together as a system, like with meditative pieces, sort of, like with those pieces, with
Mm-hmm.
herbal pieces, plus the acupuncture aspect, plus the dietary, like having all of those different pieces supporting my healing, it just helped me get more of a rapid response from my body.
Mm-hmm.
And prior to that, I wasn't not seeing results. I was, however, I got a little frustrated when I was like, here I am having surgery and I've been making these changes. So for me, I was like, I want another level. And so I love this holistic approach because what we're looking at is instead of treating symptoms, we're looking at the whole person.
Yeah.
And all of the different systems that work together. And I think that's where a lot of us with certain diagnoses get stuck, is when we're only relying on just the traditional medical community. A lot of times we're going in and we're getting prescriptions for symptoms, and then suddenly we start experiencing more symptoms. At least that was my experience.
Yeah, sometimes that's true. And so, what you're describing is common amongst the people that I work with, the patients that I work with, especially with endometriosis. So, in terms of Western medicine, really everything is looked at sort of right there. Like the endometriosis itself is just a term to describe this proliferation of endometrial tissue in the pelvic cavity. Mm-hmm. So to cure endometriosis or to get rid of the endometriosis, by definition, you just have to get rid of those lesions or those little seedings of tissue. and there's really not a lot of thought put into, well, why is it there in the first place, right? So you can give someone birth control or put them on Lupron or do surgery and kind of calm all that down, and everything looks okay. And then you're like, okay, you're good. But really, the underlying driver that's making the body produce that endometriosis is not being necessarily being addressed. And like an example too with PCOS is that, you know, if there's women who have PCOS, and this happens a lot, I think, with teens that have PCOS, they'll go to the doctor and they'll just get put on birth control. And then they'll have a period every month. Like before they weren't, and now they are. So from the outside, it's like, well, you're okay. You're having a period every month, but you're not really having a period. You're having a bleed every month because of the pill, you know. But in terms of your body's own fertility cycle, menstrual cycle, the hormonal wave that creates that, that's not happening at all. So it really just covers up whatever problem is there. And then eventually, now some cases, you know, teenagers who have cycling problems will get on the pill, and then in their 20s, when they get off the pill, their periods are okay. That's fine. You know, I'm certainly not, I don't have an opinion one way or the other. The pill is good, bad, whatever. Everybody should make their own decision about that. But the important thing is to know that the birth control pill really it's just an artificially induced what appears to be period every month, but it's not actually period. Yeah. So and that's how you don't get pregnant when you're taking it, because you're not ovulating. And if you are ovulating, your uterine lining is not getting the hormones that it normally gets to make it receptive to the embryo. So, yeah. So it's just a Band-Aid. And there's a lot of Band-Aid treatments for endometriosis, right? So what you're talking about is that after a while, what happens with a lot of women who are going through this endometriosis thing is they start to realize, you know, I've done X, I've done Y, I've done Z. Maybe it helped for a little while, but then it just keeps coming back. It's like, obviously we're not fixing the problem. It's kind of like if you had a leak in your roof and someone came and said, oh, well, if your floor was wet from the leak, I mean, you could put a bucket down. That's going to keep the floor dry. Maybe you go up there and you find the spot where it looks like it's leaking and you plug it up, and for maybe a couple of months it slows the leak down, but then eventually it starts leaking again. So obviously you didn't find the actual leak. At some point you're going to be like, you know, I really need to figure out like where this leak is.
Right. Yes.
And that's where a lot of people are by the time they come to me. So, and that's what we do. We help them. Really, we find the source of the endometriosis, which, as you said, can come from a lot of different places, right? And when we really start to address the source, the body really, in most cases, very, very quickly shifts gears. And people, I mean, I've had patients who literally 2-3 weeks after we start treatment, they've had years of pelvic pain, sometimes even constant throughout their cycle. I mean, even constant, like all the time, not just during their period. Who had tried X, Y, and Z, and within 2 or 3 weeks after we start working together, they have no pain. Like literally, they're like, my pain's gone, and we haven't put them on one drug, maybe some herbs. We got them on some herbs. We've changed up their diet a little bit. We're doing the acupuncture, so it can be very powerful. I mean, the body really knows how to heal itself, right? So once you kick that into gear, then it does amazing work.
Absolutely. It's like setting the body up so that it can do its job. And you know, like you were saying with birth control, we're not talking about there's any one way that's bad or good. You know, it's the same with medicine. Like every form of medicine has its place. However, those of us receiving these diagnoses, we can take our healing into our hands and make decisions to support whatever decisions we're making for our body, be it holistic, medical, a combination of both. It's up to us to be advocates for ourselves. to research to make those decisions, but to, one of the things I tell people all the time in these groups that we offer support in is, as long as we're not giving up on ourselves and just saying, well, this is my life, I'm in pain forever, and this is it.
Yeah.
There,
Yeah.
there's nothing I can do. And we see that a lot. And it's like, there's this part of me that's so compassionate. Like I feel that I do. However, at the end of the day, we haven't tried everything, right? Like there's always something to try. Our bodies are unique. Our bodies are different. And sometimes, like
Yeah.
you're saying, the source of the pain, the source of the problem might be different for us as the person next to us who has the same diagnosis.
Right. I'm gonna pause and just close my door real quick so my wife can, you be able to edit this out? My
Absolutely.
wife's talking
Yeah.
real quick.
Yeah. Take a moment. Absolutely.
So I pick up right there. Yeah, and I think the key there is that, people have tried a lot of things, and sometimes this is where the skill of the practitioner is important as well. Just because it's kind of like, if your car isn't working right, just because you take it to a mechanic doesn't mean that mechanic actually knows how to fix your car.
Yeah.
And even though they do work on the car, doesn't mean they actually did the right kind of work on the car. So, you may run into a lot of people who really do feel like giving up because they have tried a lot of different things. And, it's just like anything else. There's just a lot of people out here who don't really know what they're doing, who are doing those things. You can go to an acupuncturist or a surgeon or a chiropractor or whatever, and just because they have that license and whatever, that doesn't mean they have any idea how to help you. So that's why it's really important when you're doing anything related to this kind of a situation that you seek out someone who has experience and some specialized training to help you with this type of issue and has a track record as well,
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that because I know that your clinic, if I remember correctly, you guys have, when we're going back to talking specifically around fertility, and I know a lot of the women that you serve, they're coming to you for fertility and they also happen to have endo as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know you have like 2,200 babies and counting. So I think that's a
Yeah.
that's a qualified number here.
Unbelievable. Yeah, when I think about it.
It's amazing. It's so amazing, especially, because I know that some of these women, like they've tried other things or they're pairing the acupuncture with IVF. Like there's all these different paths and, helping them determine which path can support them. Could you, I know you alluded to this earlier when you were saying how acupuncture like stimulates like the function of the ovaries. Can you speak a little bit more to acupuncture assisting with fertility specifically?
Yeah. So, basically, fertility, in a nutshell, is an expression of surplus energy. Okay. So your body is not, and doesn't matter what our age is, if we don't have enough surplus energy, we're not going to be fertile. But the thing is, obviously, when we're younger, we have tons of surplus energy. Just not doing anything extra. When we're 18 years old, we can be, running 15 miles a day and eating, fast food every day, and we still feel amazing because we're like 18, right? And we've just got all this surplus energy. As we get older, into our late 20s, early 30s, and late 30s, we don't have as much leeway to not invest in self-care. We will start to feel more tired if we're, overextending ourselves or not eating right or whatever. And also then you have these conditions like endometriosis, PCOS, other things, where the body is kind of stuck in this loop of like, creating all this inflammation and doing all these other things. And all that does is just take energy away from the process of creating a healthy egg and supporting a healthy pregnancy. So in terms of how the acupuncture can play a role, it's number one, acupuncture is just on just at a baseline, regardless of any of the physiological and other things that are going on. Acupuncture triggers a very deep relaxation response, which is a little bit counterintuitive, because you would think, well, no one ever thinks of getting poked with needles and relaxing, right? But like I said before, the needles are like virtually painless. At the most, people would feel like maybe they got an ant bite or something like that, just for a second. But the way we do it at our clinic anyway, we try and we work really hard to be very gentle with our technique. But once the needles are in, okay, so your body knows the needles are there, and it starts to make a lot of endorphin and other chemicals to help you relax. Why does the body do this? Probably because this does, I think it's like almost like a simulated injury. Like your body, you're not really injured, but your body thinks something might be going on. So it kicks into a healing response. And part of that healing response is for you to relax. And if you want the example of that, it's really simple. Anybody who's ever been, and probably most people here listening haven't been, but we would take the example of someone who's been in a very severe accident with a lot of trauma to their body. They go into a coma. They sleep for days and days and days. Why? The body does that because the body knows in order for it to heal, it needs to conserve as much energy as possible, okay, and limit movement as much as possible. So you stimulate a little bit of that healing, amplified healing response just by putting the needles in the body, regardless of where you put them. So people will have really relax a lot during the treatment. And then what happens is during that relaxation period, there's like this reset of the nervous system, almost like a reboot. Like there's a bunch of, like if your computers run really slow and it's all junked up, and then you just reboot it, and then all of a sudden it's like running normally again. And so I think acupuncture does help that. And look, when it comes to the growth of a healthy egg and the growth of the uterine lining and all of these different things that are going on during the fertility cycle, which by the way do impact endometriosis as well, there's a lot of signal. In fact, the whole thing is being guided and controlled by your central nervous system, your brain and your adrenals, which are the neuroendocrine axis, which guides all these hormonal changes. So if you're really tense and anxious all the time, it could very well be, and it doesn't always, because I've had a lot of people that got pregnant who were nowhere near Zen monks or anything. I mean, they were definitely still pretty stressed out their lives, but it can definitely cause interference with your nervous system to the point where your body can't do the fertility thing that it already knows how to do, but because it's too distracted with all these other things that are getting into that nervous system loop and kind of disrupting. So that's one. Number two, with the acupuncture, we definitely have ways to access and influence the circulation, especially into the area, the uterine artery, which supplies the ovaries and the uterus. So, when you're talking about an egg growing in a healthy way, it needs nutrients, it needs the hormones that are in the blood. They're telling the follicle what to do, need to get there, right? And also the wastes need to be taken away, which is part of blood flow that a lot of people don't think about. So by increasing and helping to open up that blood flow, we can actually, I've seen really dramatic changes with patients who did IVF stimulation cycles where they weren't doing the acupuncture. Then they came in and then we incorporated it, and there was no other change other than the acupuncture, because the medications were the same, the doses of the medications were the same. And it can be dramatically different because the circulation is more open. The medicine is actually getting to the ovaries so that they can follow the instructions that the hormones that they're taking are telling it to do. And next thing you know, they have, instead of only 2 eggs and maybe one of them fertilized, they get like 6 or 7 eggs and like 4 or 5 of them fertilized. That's a huge difference, right? There can also be supplements involved in that as well, but so that really is kind of in a nutshell, And then also, obviously, with fertility and with endometriosis, we talk about this holistic thing where people don't realize that really your whole body is, all aspects of your physiology and your biology are working all the time, and they're talking to each other all the time. One example that's very common with endometriosis, and I'm sure you know this term, Kenny, is estrogen dominance.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? Well, what does estrogen dominance mean? It just means that your body tends to not have, so a normal estrogen wave during a menstrual cycle would be, it goes up and then it comes down, right? And then so this is the period, and then it peaks mid-cycle, and then it gradually comes down, and then it finally drops. You have another period, then it goes back up. So that's a normal estrogen wave. And an estrogen dominant wave is going to be where it's just going to be more flat. Doesn't mean that you're not ovulating. Doesn't mean that you're not having periods. But what it means is you're not getting this rest from the estrogen where it's going back down to a more quote unquote baseline level. The baseline, instead of being here, is maybe here. So all those tissues that are receptive to estrogen, they never really get a rest. So what can cause estrogen dominance? Well, I mean, there's a lot of things, but 2 very common sources for estrogen dominance are, one, so when, you have to think of, it's typically not because the body's making too much estrogen, by the way. It's almost always because the body simply isn't able to get rid of the estrogen it already is making. So one is going to be, and the most common that I see, is the bowel. Your primary clearance for estrogen is your, going to the bathroom, your poop. That's where most of your estrogen is cleared from your body. Women who think, oh, I only go to the bathroom every 2 or 3 days, that's fine, it's normal. My doctor said it's not a big deal. That could be, honestly, the entire cause of your endometriosis right there. If you were to take some time to get your gut health together and start going to the bathroom every day, at least once, hopefully twice. If not, we're supposed to have a bowel movement every time we eat a meal within about 20 to 30 minutes after a meal. But if you can at least be going once or twice a day, that will probably get rid of a lot of your pelvic pain. But there's the liver is also a very important site for hormone deactivation. And so women who are drinking a lot of wine, we're told like, oh, wine's good for you. Drink a glass of wine every day and blah, blah, blah. That's not science. That's marketing. And the bottom line is, if your body is working really hard every day to deal with the alcohol that you're putting in it every day by drinking wine, then what's going to happen is you could be creating a situation where it's no longer able to effectively deal with the estrogen your body's making too. So, our bodies are just, our cells are just like we are. They can multitask to a point. But at a certain point, you can't be driving your car 80 miles an hour down the freeway and putting on your makeup and eating a taco. Something's going to go wrong, right? You're either going to wreck the car, your lipstick's going to be all over your forehead, or the taco's going to be all over your lap. So your body's the same way. It's only going to be able to do so much. So most people are just overloading themselves, and obviously eating a lot of fast food, eating a lot of junk food can really screw up your liver metabolism. If you're obese, if you're significantly overweight, that's a totally that is definitely going to slow down your liver. Doesn't mean that you're sick. Doesn't mean you have liver disease. So I don't want anybody to freak out about that, because there's a lot of people. You can still live a very long, productive life, but it's definitely can really mess with your estrogen dynamics. All those situations I just mentioned. So I don't know how we got off on that topic, but
Well, it
um,
sounds though really crucial because it sounds like those with endometriosis and who are trying to conceive, and those who've been trying to conceive for quite some time and have not yet had success, that these elimination channels are really crucial. Like what I'm hearing is, well, rest is one thing that's crucial.
yeah,
And because I mentioned earlier, like the first time I did acupuncture, I was anxious because I'd never had the experience before. And then I very quickly learned that it's actually a very relaxing experience and that it
yeah,
gets even more relaxing the more you do it. So your second session, your third session, your fourth session, there comes a point where you're like, this is my self-care time. Like this is almost like nap time or like meditative time. You just go into
yeah.
a very relaxed state. And so that was absolutely my experience. Um, but it sounds to me like two of the things that we're doing, and my work is right, and like I'm there with you because two of my goals for clients are, one, we need to reduce the stress in all categories, whether it's psychological, physiological,
Mhm.
that stress response um, system. Like we want to calm that, better manage it. I mean, if we're alive and human, we're experiencing some stress in some level on some
You
day.
know what? Literally, just waking up in the morning is stressful on your body. I mean, it's every single day. Just life damages our bodies. This is just a fact of life. It's why we don't live forever.
Sure.
Um, Nobody lives forever because just living, gravity, moving, waking up to walk, and eating and digesting things causes damage to our bodies, and that's okay. That that's because we have a built-in mechanism for mitigating that, and it's called sleep. That's why we sleep every day, because the sleep time is the time for our bodies. Now, when we're little kids, sleep time is not only time for our bodies to repair, but to grow. Um, when we're adults, it's purely recuperation and restorative time.
Yeah.
So, but hey, no matter what, no matter how much you sleep, no matter how organic your food is, we're all going to get old at some point and we're all going to die at some point. And that's why it's just because life, being on the planet,
Yeah.
subject to all of the forces of nature, is just on a daily basis causes a little bit more damage. It's kind of like if you took a house and you just built a house and then you just walked away from the house and you didn't do any maintenance on the house,
Mhm.
just the forces of gravity, the wind, the rain, and temperature changes and all that. The house eventually might take years, might take, depending on what you use to build it, might take not that long. But the house is going to start to disintegrate, and it's just going to finally just fall over, right? And that's just how nature is.
Well, what I love about that is we can kind of relax a little bit related to making these changes and healing. Like we can set ourselves up for success. We can take steps towards healing. However, if we're getting super overwhelmed and stressed out about all the things we're trying to do to fight aging or disease or whatever, we can just take that step back and go, well, what do I need? I need rest. I need some nutrients. I need to do things to help my body do what it needs to do. And
Yeah,
ensuring that we're eliminating through the channels that we eliminate through, like having regular bowel movements. That's another thing that is crucial to working on healing that gut, working on allowing the body to do what it's designed to do, which is fantastic. So yeah, I love that because it sounds like we can do some of the very same things to really manage both, like increasing our chances of fertility and conceiving, and
yeah,
also reducing our symptoms and pain related to endometriosis. It's kind of like a two for one when you're working
yeah.
from that mindset.
Yeah, the thing I love about what I do is that it doesn't matter what someone's come to see me for. I mean, I specialize in fertility and I specialize in endocrinology because I really am fascinated by those things. But whether someone's coming to see me for fertility, endometriosis, because I have treated tons of people, women who don't want to have a baby right now, but are suffering with pretty severe symptoms of endometriosis, severe enough to where they're in my office, right? So And the goal is exactly the same. I mean, I talked about fertility being a product of surplus energy. The degree to which someone is fertile reflects how much surplus energy they have in their body, period. That's it. If you just want to boil it down to one equation. Now, how you get that surplus energy and where you're leaking energy, what I mean by leaking energy, again, as I talked about, if your gut is inflamed, if your liver is like working too hard, if your digestive system or the enzymes in your pancreas aren't quite, at the level they need to be, to digest all the food and the proteins and the nutrients. All these are areas where your energy is leaking in the sense that your body's working harder than it has to, and it's going to divert energy to those processes of inflammation and trying to sort all of this junk in the liver and whatever it is. And that energy is taken away from reproduction. Why? Because you're not going to die if you don't reproduce.
Right.
And it's also taken away from healing endometriosis. Why? Because you're not going to die from endometriosis. Okay?
Yeah.
But you will be significantly affected and possibly die if your liver starts to fail, or you end up with such severe inflammation in your digestive tract that you can't digest food. So that's why these things are all take precedence. The health of your brain tissue, the health of your thyroid, the health of your gut, the health of your liver, the health of your heart. All your organs takes precedence over the health of your reproductive system. So so the point is, doesn't matter if it's endometriosis, doesn't matter if it's fertility. The goal is the same. We have to build surplus energy, and we have to plug all these areas where energy is leaking out away from the healing process. Once your body has the energy to start healing itself, and we've taken these leaks and plugged them up, whether it's in the liver, the pancreas, or the gut, or the circulation, or whatever, it just fixes itself. That's it. Yeah. You don't have to do anything special, because it's like you just put a seed in the ground, but I always use the seed. That's why the book is called Awakening the Seed, because, a seed doesn't need any help. Like, you take a seed, it might be sitting on my desk for months, years, just sitting there doing nothing. And as soon as I put it in the ground, it just knows how to grow. Like, you just put a little water on it and it just keeps growing. You don't have to sit there and watch it and like micromanage it. It just does itself. Your body is the same way. Your body has that same kind of intelligence in it. But, we screw it up by, again, messing around with it all the time, So, anyway, yeah, so there you go. That's my.
Thank you so much. And I love that you mentioned that. So, and I do want to share for those of you listening that Chris has this book that's releasing, and it is called Awakening the Seed. And this is literally about egg quality, optimal fertility, like healthy babies. Like, this is about tapping into that body wisdom so that fertility, like, it's not that much of a mystery if you start, like, just like you were saying, plugging those leaks and allowing the system to heal. And so so that book is being released. You guys can find it on Amazon as of February 20th. So that's in 2 days. So be on the lookout for that. And I do want to also let you know, if you want to stay connected with Chris, find out more about what he's doing and the types of things he offers, because he is here in the Houston area. However, he has some things coming up on the horizon that that can really help patients in this space get the additional support they need. So you can reach him at the axelradclinic.com, www.theaxelradclinic.com.
That's actually just axelradclinic.com, not the, yeah. That's okay, no problem.
Just kidding, guys, scratch that. So just www.axelradclinic.com.
Yeah, spelled just like my last name with an A, R-A-D. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. So, and yeah, Axelrad is Axelrad. Is that correct? Okay.
that's correct.
Just want to make
You
sure.
got it. You
Rad.
got it.
And so, Chris, thank you so much for being here
Yeah.
today and sharing your wisdom and your insights. And I haven't gotten my copy of the book yet, but I will be snatching that, and I cannot wait to read it and to share more of those insights from it. So, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Yeah, we'll make sure you get one. I'm in the process now, finishing up the last. After I did a pre-release run, I got some feedback that I left a couple things out.
Mm-hmm.
So there's going to be an extra chapter I'm adding in. Even though the book itself, I mean, if you do what's in the book, doesn't matter if you're doing IVF or not. Doesn't matter what your age is, whatever. The book is basically everything. Is the I guess you could say the methodology, the foundations of the methodology of what I do in clinic. That's allowed me to be so successful helping people. But there were people who were like, they really wanted to know a little more specifics about if they're doing IVF. So I did add a chapter for that. And also, even though the book's called Awakening the Seed and it is focused on egg quality, which is the female side, I did have some questions also about why there wasn't a chapter dedicated to the guys. So I'm putting that chapter in there because that it is important. If you read the book, you'll learn that my opinion on that is that it's the male side is sort of it's nowhere near as important as the egg, first of all, and second of all, men typically don't buy into the self-care thing nearly as much as women do. But at the same time, anytime you have a situation where you're having difficulty getting pregnant, it always helps to have both partners involved in self-care.
Yes.
But the issue is that for a lot of females who are going through this, when they try to, sort of get their husbands involved, they meet with a lot of resistance, and they feel like, and they get really discouraged. And I just want to say right here, don't worry about that. Honestly, you're not going to be able to force anybody to want to take better care of themselves. The best way for you to make sure that you have the best chance, and honestly, the best way to get your husband to even start thinking about it, if he is resistant to that, is to just focus on you. Take care of you. And when you start, and when you start to shine and you start to have that energy and that vitality coming back and things like that, and you're not saying anything about it to your husband, he's going to notice that. And then on his own, he's going to say, like, what are you doing? Because I'm watching these changes. And then you have a better chance of getting him involved in taking better care of himself. But if not, it's okay, because a healthy, vibrant egg can overcome crappy sperm any day of the week. So don't worry about it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that, because I know that
Yeah.
that's another layer of stress that a lot of women are dealing with. And they're like,
Yeah.
how can I get my partner to take this responsibility? So thank you so much for sharing that insight, because it's important.
Yeah.
Because I would have just said, we'll just have them move out.
Yeah. Right.
Get another.
Well, if you're, on the fertility side of things, that might be a little bit of an extreme solution, but it is true that, when it comes to having a baby and raising a child, basically you guys need us for like 5 minutes, maybe even like, I don't know, 2 minutes, and that's it. The rest of it you can do on your own. That's how powerful you are, basically.
Yeah, that's the power of a woman, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And guys, check Chris out. Of course, if you didn't get the website, come over to the Endometriosis and Me page, and you will find, of course, all of these episodes listed. So if you're just tuning in via podcast and you're not watching, we're going to have that in the title of the episode. So don't stress about that. You're going to see it in writing. So you can find that at endometriosisandme.com, or straight over in the Endometriosis and Me either Facebook page or group. So We will see you guys next time. Thank you so much for tuning in and being here, and see you next week.